In this video, we're going to make one last change to our auth reducer. At present, this auth reducer is always going to return an object that vaguely looks like this right here. So it will be an object with a single property of isSignedIn, and that value will be equal to either null, true, or false. So we're going to add in one additional property to this thing. This other property is not going to make a lot of sense right now, but it's going to make a lot of sense later on as we continue developing this course. Remember that the entire idea of this application is that we're going to eventually have an API server, like this thing right here, that's going to store a list of all the streams that have been created by our users. The other thing I want you to recall is that inside of our mockups, we had said, let me pull those mockups up right here. So we had said that once a user is logged in, a user should be able to delete or edit the streams that they have created. So at some point in time, we need to make sure that each stream is somehow associated with the user who created it. So in order to do so, we're going to essentially create each stream record inside that API server that contains the ID of the user who created it. Now at present, we don't have any user ID or anything like that, but it turns out that we do through Google Auth. Let me show you something really quickly. I'm going to flip back over to my browser console at our application, and I'm going to make sure that I am signed in. Make sure you are signed in as well if you want to write out this code too. Then inside my console, I'm going to reference the auth instance with gapi.auth2.getAuthInstance.currentUser. So this current user right here is a reference to all the information about the user who is currently signed in to our application. Inside of this current user object is the ID of the user who's signed in. Now this ID is the Google ID for this user. When this user created their account through google.com, like they went to google.com and signed up for a new account, Google assigned them an ID automatically. So inside of our application, we're just going to reuse the Google ID for this user to record which user created which stream. Now, a lot of this stuff is not going to seem super relevant right now, but trust me, as soon as we start creating streams and trying to edit them, this is going to make a lot more sense, and figuring out how we make sure that a given user is only able to create and edit a stream that, or excuse me, only able to edit and delete a stream that they have created. So to actually get an ID out of this object right here, we can reference current user.get and then call get ID like so. And that right there is the ID of the user who is currently signed in to our application. If we sign out and then sign in as some other user, like with some other Gmail address or Google address, the ID will be completely different. So we want to essentially store this ID inside of our auth reducer or through our auth reducer so that when we create streams at some point in the future, we can mark which user created the stream very easily by using that ID. All right, so to do so, we're going to first flip back over to our Google Auth component. Inside of here, I'm going to go on down to onAuthChange. So when we call onSignIn, I don't want to just call signin. I want to call signin and also pass in the ID of the user who is currently signed in. So I'm going to add as an argument to this action creator a call to our auth instance. And we're going to essentially write out the same code that you see right here to get the ID of the currently signed in user. So right here, I'm going to say this.auth.currentUser.get ID, like so. So now when we call this action creator, we're going to also pass in the ID of the user who has signed in. So now we need to make sure that we open up our action creator as well, receive this ID as an argument, and pass it through to the reducer by assigning this ID to the action object as a payload property. So inside of my actions index.js file, I'm going to find my sign-in action creator. Here it is right here. I'm going to receive that user ID as an argument, and I'll add it to my action on the payload property, like so. And so now finally, inside of our auth reducer, this is the part that we worked up to, we're going to make sure that when a user signs in right here, we not only update the isSignedIn property, we're going to make sure that we also update the user ID flag as well. Now to really do this correctly, I'm going to make sure that on my initial state, I put on user ID, and I'm going to initialize it to null. With a value of null, that means that we don't currently have a user ID. So then inside of this update right here, for case sign in, I'm going to make sure that I update the user ID property, and the new value for this property is going to come from action.payload. Now, when a user signs out, we should probably also clear that property. So when a user signs out, we want to make sure that we don't accidentally carry that user ID around. Because when a user signs out, that's pretty much it. They do not want to be associated with our application anymore. So when a user signs out, I'm going to update user ID back to a value of null, like so. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now let's do one more quick test over here. We're not going to actually see any change to our application. Nonetheless, I just want to make sure that we can go through the entire authentication process without seeing an error message. So I will refresh the page. I'll then sign out. I'll then sign back in. And it looks like I signed in successfully without any error message. Perfect. All right, so that's pretty much it for authentication. That's all we really had to do. We put together the auth reducer, we put together the Google Auth component, and these two very simple action creators. So now let's take a pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we're going to start moving forward on our application and making sure that a user can eventually create a stream and then eventually show a list of streams. So quick pause, and I'll see you in just a minute.